All right. So today we are back and on a call to activism live. Today we have the pleasure of joining you through the Siren Network, which is this awesome thing that's bringing a massive amount of people together. There's some really cool things that happened recently with the Gavin Newsom interview. So check out the Siren. It's been a lot of fun to work with such amazing people and see this network grow. But today we're here from Call to Activism. Today was a cluster F. It started very early this morning, the news cycle with Abrego Garcia.
Yeah.
Um, Talk about that and your perspective about his deportation again.
Again, I mean, like, what an emotional roller coaster for Abrego Garcia and his entire family having to go through this. He just got out of jail from Tennessee on Friday. He came back, saw everybody in Maryland, was reunited with his family, and today he had to go in to check in with ICE, and they took him into custody again.
And there's some talk about sending him to Uganda.
Right. So that's the whole thing. They offered him a plea deal where he could go to Costa Rica and plead guilty to the crimes that they're accusing him of, or they're going to send him to Uganda.
Mhm.
So today he rejected Costa Rica, and his lawyer said, "My client is not going to plead guilty to a crime he didn't commit and he's not guilty of."
Mhm.
So they threatened to send him to Uganda, and they dropped a lawsuit and said that Kilmar Abrego Garcia is suing the government, and he is not going to Uganda. So now a judge has put everything on hold, and we're waiting to hear back.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so his wife and children are US citizens, or at least they're authorized to be here. Um, it's just it's we know that cruelty is the point. It's like whatever they do is meant to just be the most cruel thing, split families, take a hardworking person out of the state. Um, it's really it's just mind-boggling, and the whole Uganda thing is literally just to sound more evil and more disgusting as they possibly can.
Right.
But yeah, so that started this morning. Thank you for the update with that. And then Donald Trump turns around and has like a presser in the Oval Office, which it's a little telling. He's starting to do these sitting down a lot. And so there's some talk about his health that it might not be what he says it is. So we've had a letter from his doctor, I believe January, that said he's in great health. Since then, we know about his swollen ankles. We see his bruised hand. Today it was in full view. It looked like he was trying to hide it purposely. Do I trust Donald Trump to tell the truth about his health?
No.
No. Release the files, release his health files now, so now they have to release the Epstein files and his health files.
And we still have not forgotten about the Epstein files.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So many distractions happening, but that is something we should all still be very, very focused on.
Absolutely. But yeah, we were talking about his hand. There was uh, a person who's a physical therapist who works at home with people who have congenitive heart failure or congestive heart failure.
Right.
And he came out and did a video saying that Donald Trump's symptoms look like someone who has congestive heart failure. The swollen ankles, the bruise, he says, looks like people who have that ailment
Right.
who get an IV treatment of a diuretic, which is prescribed for congestive heart failure. To help pass the fluid in your body. And so that bruise is very commonly seen on someone who gets frequent IVs of something
Right.
in their hand. Now, he claims it's from shaking hands, and they say Donald Trump shakes more hands than anyone on the planet.
A lot of people shake hands. Doesn't happen to my hand.
Governors, we've seen presidents, former presidents. I haven't seen a hand like that. Now, with that said, if he's got circulation issues, that's something. But I definitely don't trust this administration to tell the truth. We're not conspiracy theorists, but I think we want to know the truth about things. So I think it's interesting, and we'll stay on top of it because
we all deserve to know.
Yeah,
we all deserve to know answers. We have to know if he's fit and able to run the country. Personally, I don't think he is for a number of other reasons. Absolutely. But if his health is a problem, then we all deserve to know that as well. There's heart failure, kidney failure. Could it be something else? Could he be getting infusions for another disease?
And we'll never
I
know.
mean,
For this
would love to know what you guys think.
syphilitic brain. No. Now, the other thing that is interesting is today, while he's sitting in the White House, starts having his presser. He made a pretty huge blunder. He confused current Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer with what sounded like Christine Todd Whitman from New Jersey,
Yeah.
former governor in the late 90s to the early 2000s. Now, he said something like Christy Whitman, which was really interesting. And then he eventually fixed it, but he repeated it a couple of times. Like, these things happen. The thing that I resent the most is, like, the media spends exactly 0 seconds talking about Donald Trump's health, especially his mental cognition. We heard how many times the media focused on Biden. We know the books that were written. And here you have Donald Trump looking like shit, if I could be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
And he's forgetting things, and he slips, and they're becoming more frequent. I'm noticing there's almost one a week. We track them, because they're interesting, and when we see them, we tell people about them. But they're happening more and more frequently, where he just says something that's just not right, or he flubs something that he maybe should have known. He mistakenly called Christy Nome the name of a famous golfer. So things like that happen. Now, obviously, that happens to everybody, but when you're the president of the United States, and MAGA made such a huge deal about the mental faculties of the president and how important they are, well, you can't blame us for shining a light on the same exact thing. So I think we should stay on top of that too, and we are. During that press conference, again, Donald Trump said some things that were heard around the world today. And I want to talk about that because I think it says a lot about who Donald Trump is and what his MO is and what we should be aware of. He was talking about J.B. Pritzker, which I thought was interesting. Today, he really dug in on Governor Pritzker of Illinois. Like he was obsessed. And Governor Pritzker utilized the opportunity to do his own press conference, which he scheduled very quickly in response to Donald Trump's comments.
Yep.
But in the Oval Office, sitting at the desk, Donald Trump called J.B. Pritzker a slob and said that J.B. Pritzker and others were saying that Donald Trump was a dictator. And then he says, very tellingly, he says, well, people are saying that they want to see a dictator. Weird as shit. Like, who said that?
Yeah.
And then he said, I'm not a dictator. And then he said, I have a lot of common sense and I'm a very smart man.
Didn't he
All
say he was smart? Yeah, I was just gonna say.
Things that everyone says all the time, about how intelligent we are. Just normal conversation, normal, cooler conversation about how much common sense and how smart we are.
The more he rants, I feel like the more insecure he is, and the more he just spirals down this little rabbit hole that it's going to be very hard getting out of.
I mean, that's what it felt like to me. But so he says this thing, which, okay, let's take this for a second. So he says people are saying that they like a dictator. Okay, why the F would Donald Trump say that? I've noticed, I think everyone listening here probably has as well, that his modus operandi is that he floats stuff. He teases things. He tests things. He says this outlandish shit that we all jump on because we have to. Like, you can't allow a president to say we want a dictator and not talk about it.
Yeah.
But it's like he puts it in the ether and then he tests the ground so that he can maybe act on it. And today I had a really sick feeling in my stomach because it reminded me of that short period right before the 2020 election, if you guys think back.
Yeah.
Where he started like teasing that the election was stolen even before the election to hedge his bets in case he lost. And he was saying just like this, he was making jokes. There were innuendos, little comments about how, and this, and they're going to steal it. And he did it in 2016 too. And he famously said, if I win, then there'll be no problem, It's absolutely ridiculous. But that's what he does. He tests the water. So when a president of the United States is teasing being a dictator, it's every American's job to say, what the F? What is that? Let's call it what it is. It's a disgusting, absolutely authoritarian, fascist wannabe disgusting man that he is. And I think we shouldn't stand for it. Now, the other thing that frustrates me greatly, and tell me if you agree,
Yeah.
I don't think Democrats win on this issue. It's almost like the more we say we're scared, we're fearful, he's going to take over, people start getting numb to it.
Right.
But he's doing it in such right before our eyes and in the open. Goes on Joe Rogan during the election, and here we're saying this guy's a fascist. It goes against this movement of thought that this guy represents a really awful fabric of this authoritarian, disgusting bullshit where it's absolute power. People like Stephen Miller want an absolute powerful president.
Yes.
Where the executive is not to be questioned, which isn't in the Constitution.
Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely
separation of powers. We have 3 different bodies of government. So to me, it just feels like we need to figure out how to win on this issue.
Right. I feel like we're always playing defense and we really need to play offense. We have to come out with a solid plan, communicate it well, let every voter know exactly what we have planned for the upcoming midterms and even the presidential election. Just a clear message that everybody can relate to, understand, that's simple and easy and communicated well.
Absolutely. Now, I will always have a special place in my heart for President Joe Biden. He saved us from Donald Trump in 2020. But I think the one thing that I wish and I want to see in a future Democratic president, and I had my hopes that it would happen in 2020 and after, was a way to deal with these glaring holes that we have for a president to trample our Constitution and risk our democracy. And I feel like there are certain vulnerabilities that Donald Trump has now identified for us.
Mhm.
We see that now.
Yeah.
We see that there is a gerrymandering risk that could literally threaten a free election. We could be in a one-party rule for us.
But look at us. Look at the position we're in. We are playing defense, right?
Absolutely.
And we have to stop doing that. We have to identify the problems before they do. So we're playing offense and they start playing defense.
Absolutely. I remember Congressman Eric Swalwell
Yeah.
was a proponent of what I'm saying, this idea that Democrats really need to sit down. I mean, like we almost need a convention,
Yeah.
right? And you need to sit down and come up with 10 things, guardrails that could protect our democracy. Maybe undo some of the stuff that Donald Trump has done,
Mhm.
close some of these scary loopholes that have been identified so that a future president can't make it any worse than Donald Trump has already made it.
Right. Right.
And I feel like that now, obviously, some things need congressional approval, some things require the courts to agree, some things require constitutional amendments.
Yes.
But I'm talking about the low-hanging fruit, the stuff that we could actually do if we win the midterms in 2026, something that we could do if we win the presidency in 2028. And we hope that that happens. Things are not good. I don't know how Americans, there's 2 Americas right now, and they're getting 2 different pieces, 2 different sets of information. The people on the left are getting the truth, and the people on the right are hearing Newsmax and Fox News sing Donald Trump's praises and say how wonderful everything is. But
deep down they know, because really, if you go to any Trump supporter or any MAGA right now who still wants to support Donald Trump, and you look at them in the face and you say, hey, what policies has he passed that have actually really helped you personally? They can't answer.
No.
They can't answer because nothing he has done has helped anybody, especially his own supporters. And they will not admit it to you because they're too embarrassed, or they're just blind to it and continue to follow his lead.
Absolutely.
He's very powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a powerful mouthpiece. He lies. He repeats the same lie over and over again. They get brainwashed to believe it's true because he says it. There's a very famous moment, and I love telling this story, where right after the Access Hollywood tape, Billy Bush was interviewed. Now, remind you guys that this guy lost his career, Billy Bush, because of what Donald Trump said. That's how it works here, right? If you work for Donald Trump and you break the law for him, you go to jail, and Donald Trump ends up in the White House. Billy Bush lost his job, but Billy Bush famously said that after this interview, he was talking to Donald Trump at one point, and Donald Trump said something that wasn't true. And Billy Bush like fact checked him, but very politely was like, well, actually, I don't think that's true. And Donald, it was something about the ratings of Apprentice.
Yeah.
And Billy Bush turned around and said, oh, no, actually, Donald, that's not true. And off the record, Donald Trump said something like, oh, Billy, it doesn't matter. You just say it and people believe you. And that made the little hairs stick up on my neck, because once you know that, that breaks the code. Donald Trump says things because he knows a certain percentage of America is going to believe him no matter if it's true or not.
Yeah.
And that makes our jobs hard because we have to constantly fact check him. And he lies so much that people get numb to it, and it's like, oh, here's another lie and here's another lie. And he just exhausts us.
But do you think that people actually believe the lies, or do you think that they just don't want to admit that they were duped and conned?
It's a great question, because I've sat with this for a while, because part of me thinks like they're in on it, right? Like even congressional Republicans in particular, even Senate Republicans, there are some Senate Republicans who don't seem like your typical Trump supporter, right?
Right.
Like they're going to go trust, some schwarmy businessman from New York.
Right.
But they go along with it because Donald Trump is a useful idiot.
Yeah.
He's also a very powerful distractor in chief.
Right.
And he gets to do these big outlandish things and say these big outlandish stuff. And then Project 25 just gets check mark, running down the list.
Right.
Because he's such a huge, fiery, embarrassing, chaotic mess that I think that they go along with it. And I think sometimes these delusions, Republicans, in my opinion, especially lawmakers, they tend to do anything to hold on to power.
Right.
And they see Donald Trump's shenanigans as a way to do that.
But I'm talking about like the average voter and supporter, I mean, they have to see through it. I mean, we're seeing businesses now being run by Trump supporters that are getting raided, and people are getting arrested, and you have to wonder, like, they still say they're supporting Donald Trump, and their businesses are being ripped apart. So like, do you call them hypocrites, or is there some logic to their madness that I will never agree with?
I think that's something we need to know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a conversation we should keep having, because at some point, Trump is going to go away, right? I don't care what he tries, he's 80 years old and he doesn't look like he has much time by the looks of his hands. But no, Donald Trump he's not going to lead the Republican movement forever. At some point he goes away. The question is always going to be, does this whole thing go away? Is America going to wake up from this spell? And even if we have a Republican president, it's going to look way different than this particular MAGA movement. Is there going to be a standard bearer that continues it? My point is, that's going to dictate how we need to move forward,
Right.
even beyond Trump. How do we reach these people again?
Right.
And that's the question.
And it's like you have to tread lightly on the topic, because a lot of the voters who did support Trump and still do support Trump may not necessarily want to admit they were conned.
Mhm.
Nobody wants to admit they
human
were conned.
nature.
It's human nature. Either you're too proud to, or you just, it's a whole movement that you kind of just flow with. So, if they're not going to want to admit it or talk about it, like, what's a good way to reach them?
It's a great question, and it's very hard. It's hard being a Democrat at times, right? Because they say be on the offense, right? But, obviously there are times where there are real impediments to our agenda, right? Even the agenda, forget progressive and centrist and moderate and in the middle. Democrats have been stymied for decades, right? Like you had Manchin and Cinema, right?
Mhm.
When President Biden had the majority, and we had the minimum wage bill canceled. We had really important bills that we wanted passed not happen because of that, even when we had the majority. And now we don't have the majority.
Right, but you see all these bills being passed now, and it's really not helping anybody. Who is it helping? It's helping billionaires.
Yeah. I mean, and you could
Yeah.
believe your own eyes, right? Like
Right.
the grocery prices are next to zero. He's telling all his people that I've seen that White House memes about how grocery prices are down. That's Donald Trump literally
Gaslighting you. He's gaslighting America.
He says repeatedly that gas is under $2 in places around the country where there's literally nowhere in America where gas is less than $2.
I'd love to hear from somebody who finds gas prices for that cost.
I have never seen.
I haven't seen it.
We offered $1,000 once on CTA if someone could find gas less than $2. Someone tried, but you needed like some, reward program to get there. But that's cheap.
That doesn't count.
But yeah, so that's what they do. They lie. But at the end of the day, people go shopping. They know their budget, right? You know how much money you have every month to shop. You know how much your weekly allowance is to buy
Right.
food.
It just ties back into this thing, where people do not want to admit they were conned.
Yeah, I hear you. And I, how do we move forward? I would love a situation where we're bringing back at least some of the moderate Republicans into the fold. You had people like Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger really fighting hard in 2024. And I'm sad to say it didn't work. When you look at the numbers, a lot of these moderate Republicans who at first seemed like they were, questioning Donald Trump's vote and that, maybe would go Democratic.
Right, but
They kind of didn't.
They believed Donald Trump's promises, and he basically went against everything he promised. And you have Caroline Leavitt saying promises made, promises kept. I'm not really seeing any of those promises being kept. I mean, where are the Epstein files? Right? That was huge, and I think that's probably why he got so many votes.
Ending the Ukraine war.
In the Ukraine war, he said that
invasion
right
the first day.
Right. And that never happened either.
No, grocery prices lower.
Grocery prices lower. The list goes on, and he didn't do anything. He didn't do anything but take Medicaid away and cozy up to Putin.
Absolutely.
And that's not really acceptable.
No. So, but today, we did see some Democratic response to the BS where Governor Pritzker had his press conference in Chicago. And I was so happy this happened because it was really frustrating hearing Donald Trump lie about some of these Democratic cities. Even we know Washington, D.C. very intimately, and we know that since 2024, crime is down in Washington, D.C. So that's the national emergency, that crime is 30% down. Same in Chicago. Murders are down, robberies are down, carjackings are down, violent crime generally is down, and by large number. It's been going down steadily. It's in the 30% range, which for a city is a huge drop.
Right.
So we're not in a crime time where it makes sense to have troops marching down the street. If anything, crime is going down. So
it's down. And you know what? The National Guard is here, but they can't police, they can't arrest. They're just there. Right. And it's costing $1 million every day that they're here.
Absolutely. We got to speak with a Washington, D.C. Police officer, MPD. And what he said was the most effective policing that happens in Washington, D.C. is under the mayor's auspices. It's the MPD and whatever they're doing.
Right.
And it isn't the federal government stepping in and having basically show troops walk around these areas, not arresting people, not doing anything.
And they're not in the high crime areas either.
No.
They're down by the White House and the Capitol and the monuments, and it just makes it seem like they're there for show. They're props. They're walking around and they have a presence here, but they're not really actively doing anything other than just standing there because they can't do anything.
Absolutely. And Governor Pritzker called them out, and he said, "Don't come to Chicago. We don't want you here. We don't need you here," which I thought was great. Questioned his cognitive abilities, which I also thought that it's about time that Democrats kind of fight back and use strong language. And I think he did great. I think his performance was perfect. His speech hit a note, and I think right now these Democratic governors really have a place on the national stage, and they are keeping a lot of us sane, dealing with this BS and seeing what Donald Trump is doing. And we're all desperate for action. We want to see something, and Congress is stymied. So I think that the governors have a place to step in and do some serious action. And we want to see, I think, more than just words. We want to see them to take steps, and fight fire with fire. And we've seen that. We've seen that in places like Texas with Beto raising money and doing all sorts of good work communicating and at least helping candidates now win these new maps. We see Governor Newsom doing it in California by just giving Republicans a taste of their own medicine. Like imagine that, and not just taking it on the chin. And it goes back to Merrick Garland and the having him not be on the Supreme Court and Mitch McConnell stealing a Supreme Court seat and us just saying, oh, that was bad, no action. And I think those days are over because we're going to literally see our country fall apart. We're going to see our rights trampled on. We're going to see democracy as we know it go away. And the country that we love and its founding principles are literally being stepped on every single minute. So we're ready. We are ready for action. And when I say action, I mean passing laws that prevent some of this BS, or being creative. I've been really proud to see some lawmakers really dig deep in our laws and find creative ways. There are many examples, but you have Senator Chuck Schumer and the House National Security, the Senate National Security Committee used that 100-year-old law to request the Epstein files, and now that's in process. Obviously,
And they're late.
Florida.
They're late.
Yeah,
they're
it's gonna be a
delaying,
process.
using their tactics.
Absolutely.
But you know what?
But
Good
it's
on them for
starting.
finding it, and
Yes.
hopefully it'll be released soon.
Absolutely. And you have people like Congressman Robert Garcia, really pushing James Comer to subpoena the Epstein files. And now that's in process. We just got to keep on the gas, and not settle for anything and just um, be creative. And I think that's what we want. We want creative leadership right now, not just words, not just angry letters, but creative leadership. I think that the plan in California to add seats to counter what they did in Texas is exactly a brilliant move. And thank you to Governor Wes Moore for saying no to the to troops in Baltimore, and same with Governor Pritzker. They're putting up a fight. It's not easy, obviously, to be them, and they have pressure too. But it seems like they're meeting the moment.
Yes.
But yeah, so we're gonna try to do these lives more often. We love it. We love being able to talk to you and discuss some of these issues. We really would love feedback because there's so many different ways we can handle these videos. A lot of people don't realize that Cosima is the head of the Facebook division on call to activism, and you're doing such an amazing job. So, I mean, your infographics are awesome. I get my news from you from your Facebook infographics. They're really, really helpful. They tell you the word, the news in a minute, and I think it's important because
Thank
there's
you.
a lot of news out there.
Thank
So
you. Well, you're
for your
doing
work.
a great job. Also, we love seeing your videos.
Thank you.
A lot of important information in there, and it's quick and easy to understand. So
Thank you so much.
keep on going with that.
Yeah, so the sky's the limit. We're going to keep going with these and just really appreciate you because every view matters, every like and share matters. Please follow us if you can, especially on Instagram as we grow there. There's our Facebook page, Threads, X, pick your poison. But the whole idea of why we're doing what we're doing, is really in 2015 we saw what was happening on Facebook and social media with the Russian troll farms and the lies that were being told about Democrats. And there was this tremendous false information wave, that was going on social media, if you remember at the time. And I saw even people that I cared about sharing articles that were completely false, like made up as true. Things that said parody, and yet they were just passing them on, and there was nothing to do. And we mounted a fight. We started on Facebook. We ended up growing super fast, and pages like ours uh, did the same thing, and we ended up really, I think, conquering the moment for a minute. The group. I remember the yeah, there were some studies that actually looked at Facebook, and they were saying that there was we were starting to turn the tide where democratic memes were starting to outweigh the lies, and the false information.
Yeah.
And then X happened, and it seems that while we were looking away, the right wing really created this massive independent media infrastructure on YouTube and places. And now we have to play catch up. But I'm glad to say we're growing fast on all platforms. We're really trying hard to meet the moment and fight that right wing sort of hold on independent media. And it's going good, and we got to continue. And we thank you so much for allowing us to do that. So thanks again. We'll see you next week. We're going to try to do it around 7:15, and hope to see you then.
Have a good night.
Good night. Thank you so much.